$69 million. That's what someone paid for a digital picture in March 2021. Not a Rembrandt, not a Picasso. A JPEG file that you could right-click and save to your computer for free. Last week, a man called my show in tears. He'd taken out a $50,000 personal loan at 18% interest to buy NFTs because his nephew made $200,000 flipping cartoon apes and bought a Lamborghini. Now, those NFTs are worth $2,800. He can't make his loan payments. His wife is threatening divorce. His financial life is destroyed. The NFT market didn't just cool down. It crashed 97%. Million-dollar JPEGs are now worth pocket change. Some are literally worth zero. The bubble has already burst. But people still ask me, Dave, should I buy NFTs now that they're cheap? Wrong question. The real question is, would you pay thousands of dollars for a receipt that proves you own a link to a picture that anyone can download for free? I've spent 30 years teaching people how to build real wealth. I've seen every scam and NFTs. One of the dumbest financial disasters I've ever witnessed. I'm going to show you exactly why you should never touch them. Let me explain what you're actually buying when you purchase an NFT, because the people selling this garbage don't want you to understand the truth. When you buy an NFT, you are not buying the artwork. You're not buying the copyright. You're not buying the exclusive rights to use that image. You're buying a receipt. That's it. A blockchain verified receipt that says you own a token associated with a digital file, a file that literally anyone in the world can view, download, copy, and use completely free. Think about how insane that is. You're paying $50,000 for a receipt that says you own something while that thing remains available to everyone else on the planet. It's like walking into the Louvre, buying a receipt that says you own the Mona Lisa, and then leaving while the actual Mona Lisa stays on the wall where millions of people can see it. You walk away with a piece of paper. Congratulations. But here's where it gets even dumber. You're not even buying the actual digital image. You're buying a token that contains a link, a URL, that points to where that image is stored on someone else's server. If that server goes down, your $50,000 NFT becomes a broken link. You own nothing. And guess what? Servers have gone down. There are people right now who paid thousands of dollars for NFTs that literally point to nothing because the hosting service shut down. Now, the NFT crowd will tell you, but Dave, it's on the blockchain. It's verified. It's scarce. So what? I could create 10 digital certificates right now that say Dave Ramsey's left shoe and put them on the blockchain. There would only be 10 in existence. Does that make them worth $100,000 each? Does that mean you should take out a loan to buy one? No, because scarcity doesn't create value. Anything can be made artificially scarce. I could limit the number of rocks I pick up in my driveway to exactly 21 and call them rare. Would you pay $50,000 for one? Real scarcity combined with actual utility creates value. Gold is scarce and has industrial uses. Original Picasso paintings are scarce, and you actually own the physical canvas. A 1,952 Mickey Mantle baseball card is scarce, and you can hold it in your hand. NFTs, they're artificially scarce digital receipts for files everyone can access. There's no there. And let's talk about what NFTs actually produce. What cash flow do they generate? What dividends do they pay? What rent do they collect? Nothing. Zero. Zilch. A real investment produces something. When you own stock in a company, that company is making products, earning revenue, and generating profits. When you own real estate, it's producing rental income. When you own a bond, it's paying you interest. NFTs sit there and do absolutely nothing except exist on a blockchain. You can't even honestly call this collecting. Real collectors own physical items. Comic book collectors own actual comic books they can touch, read, and store. Art collectors own paintings that they can hang on their walls. Sports card collectors own cards that they can hold. What do NFT collectors own? Access to a URL. The right to say that's mine while everyone else enjoys the exact same image for free. It's collecting in the same way that screenshotting pictures off Instagram is photography. The whole thing is built on a fantasy. The fantasy that digital ownership of something everyone can access for free has value. The fantasy that a blockchain receipt is the same as actual ownership. The fantasy that artificial scarcity equals real worth. I've had people call my show and try to explain to me why their NFT is valuable. They talk about the community. They talk about the technology. They talk about Web3 and the metaverse and the future. And I ask them one simple question. If you needed to sell it today to pay your mortgage, could you? Silence. Because they can't. Because nobody wants to buy their expensive receipt. You know what makes me furious? There are people out there with real financial problems, debt, no emergency fund, no retirement savings, and instead of fixing those problems, they're gambling their money on digital receipts because someone on YouTube told them it was the future. It's not the future. It's financial suicide dressed up in tech jargon. Now that you understand what NFTs actually are, expensive receipts for nothing that anyone can access, let me show you the con game that convinced millions of people this was a good investment. Here's how people actually made money with NFTs. And once you understand this, you'll see why the whole thing was always going to end in disaster. It's called the greater fool theory. You buy something that's essentially worthless, you hype it up, and then you find someone dumber than you, a greater fool, to buy it from you at a higher price. That's the entire business model. That's it. You're not investing. You're not building wealth. You're playing musical chairs with other people's money, hoping you're not the one left standing when the music stops. In 2021, this actually worked for some people. I watched it happen. Someone would buy a Bored Ape NFT for $50,000. 2 weeks later, they'd flip it for $150,000. That person would turn around and sell it for $300,000. Then someone else would buy it hoping to sell it for $500,000. Everybody was making money. Every single person in the chain was walking away richer until they weren't. Because here's the mathematical certainty that destroys every single one of these schemes. You eventually run out of greater fools. At some point, there's nobody left willing to pay more than the last guy paid. And when that happens, when the buyers disappear, the whole thing collapses like a house of cards. Instantly. Permanently. Brutally. This isn't theory. This is exactly what happened. The NFT market peaked in early 2022, and then it died. Not a correction, not a cool down, a complete collapse. Trading volume dropped 95%. Prices fell off a cliff. Those Bored Apes that were selling for $400,000 down to $50,000. Then $20,000. Then less. And they're still falling. I had a caller on my show who bought an NFT for $80,000. He was convinced it would go to $1 million. Now he can't sell it for $5,000. Nobody wants it. There are no buyers. He's sitting there with this digital receipt he paid $80,000 for, and the best offer he can get is $5,000. That's not an investment that went bad. That's a catastrophic loss on something that was never an investment to begin with. See, real investments have something to catch their fall. When you own stock in a good company, that company is generating revenue, making profits, providing products or services people actually want. If the stock price drops, you still own a piece of a business that produces value. When you own real estate, it's generating rental income every single month. The property has utility. People need places to live. Even if the market drops, you're still collecting rent. Bonds pay interest. Dividend stocks pay dividends. There's actual production happening. What does an NFT produce? Nothing. There's no cash flow, no earnings, no revenue, no dividends, no rent, no interest, zero. When the price drops, there's nothing underneath to stop the fall. It just keeps going down until it hits zero. Because that's what it's actually worth. This is why I always talk about investing in things that produce income. Real wealth comes from owning productive assets. The stock market has created more millionaires than any other wealth-building tool in history because you're buying ownership in businesses that make money. Real estate builds wealth because properties generate income and appreciate over time based on real demand. These aren't gambles. These are proven wealth-building tools. NFTs, they're digital beanie babies. Remember beanie babies? In the 1,990 seconds, people were paying thousands of dollars for stuffed animals because they thought they'd be valuable collector's items. They mortgaged houses. They took out loans. They were convinced these would fund their retirement. Where are those Beanie Babies now? Worthless. Sitting in storage units and attics? The people who bought at the peak lost everything? This has happened over and over throughout history. Tulip bulbs in 1,630 seconds. Holland. People were trading houses for tulip bulbs. One bulb was worth 10 years of a craftsman's salary. Then the bubble popped, and they were just flowers again. The Dutch economy nearly collapsed. The pattern is always the same. Something gets hyped. Early adopters make money. That success brings in more people. Prices skyrocket. Everyone thinks they're a genius. The media covers it. Your neighbor's kid quits his job because he's rich from flipping whatever the thing is, and then suddenly there are no more buyers. The price crashes, and millions of people are left holding worthless assets they paid real money for. I've talked to people who are financially destroyed by NFTs. A guy who took out a $50,000 personal loan at 18% interest. A couple who refinanced their house to buy digital apes. A young woman who spent her entire emergency fund. These aren't stupid people. They're ordinary Americans who got caught up in the hype and believed the lie that this was their chance to get rich. The people who made real money on NFTs were the ones who got in early and got out fast. They made millions by selling to people who came in late. And those latecomers, they're the bag holders now, stuck with assets they can't sell, watching their investment, their gamble, go to zero. So who convinced millions of Americans that this casino was a smart investment? Let me tell you about the celebrities and influencers who sold you out for a paycheck. You want to know what really makes my blood boil? The celebrities, the athletes, the influencers. People with millions of followers who use their fame to pump this garbage to their fans. Paris Hilton went on Jimmy Fallon's late night show, and the two of them sat there giggling about their bored apes like a couple of kids showing off their new toys. It was embarrassing to watch. Two millionaires hyping digital receipts to an audience of regular people who actually have to work for their money. Steph Curry spent nearly $200,000 on a cartoon ape and made it his Twitter profile picture. Snoop Dogg was all over NFTs. Eminem bought one. Justin Bieber dropped serious money. When ordinary people see their heroes doing this, they think it must be legitimate. If it's good enough for Steph Curry, it's good enough for me, right? Wrong. Here's what nobody told you. Many of these celebrities were getting paid to promote NFTs. They were given free NFTs or straight cash to hype these projects to their followers. They weren't risking their own money the way you were. They were getting compensated to influence you to risk yours. That's not investing. That's a paid advertisement disguised as a personal endorsement. And when the market collapsed, silence. Crickets. Not one apology, not one acknowledgement that they led their fans into financial disaster. They deleted their tweets. They stopped talking about their NFT investments. They moved on to the next trend like nothing happened. Meanwhile, the people who trusted them, the teachers, the nurses, the construction workers who bought NFTs because their favorite celebrity said it was smart, those people lost everything. Let me tell you about Logan Paul. This guy launched a NFT project called Crypto Zoo, raised millions of dollars from his fans, made all kinds of promises about what the project would deliver, games, rewards, a whole ecosystem. People bought in because they trusted him, they believed in him. The project was a complete disaster. It failed spectacularly. His fans lost massive amounts of money. And where's Logan now? Still rich, still making videos, still living his life like nothing happened. The people who trusted him, many of them are financially devastated. Did he refund them? Did he apologize? Did he take any responsibility? No. This is what drives me crazy about celebrity financial advice. These people live in a completely different financial universe than you do. When Steph Curry buys an NFT for $200,000 and it goes to zero, it doesn't affect his life one bit. He's worth hundreds of millions of dollars. That loss is a rounding error in his net worth. He'll never miss it. But when you buy an NFT for $20,000 and it goes to zero, that's your kid's college fund. That's your down payment on a house. That's your retirement savings. That's your financial security gone forever. The risk is completely asymmetric. Celebrities got paid to promote these things. They took no real financial risk. Even if they bought NFTs with their own money, the amounts were insignificant relative to their wealth. But their fans were betting money they couldn't afford to lose, money they needed, money that represented years of hard work and sacrifice. I've talked to people on my show who bought NFTs specifically because a celebrity endorsed them. A young guy who spent $15,000 on a project that Logan Paul promoted. A woman who bought into an NFT collection because her favorite musician was involved. These weren't people making independent financial decisions based on research and due diligence. These were fans following people they admired and trusted. And not one of these celebrities has come back to help the people who lost money following their advice. Not one has set up a fund to compensate their fans. Not one has acknowledged their role in this disaster. They just moved on. Because for them, it was entertainment, it was a trend, it was content for their social media, for their fans. It was real money and real consequences. This is exactly why you should never take financial advice from celebrities. They don't know more about money than you do. In fact, most of them don't know anything about money. They have accountants and business managers handling everything for them. Many celebrities go broke despite earning millions because they have no idea how to actually manage wealth. Just because someone is famous or talented at basketball or music or making videos doesn't mean they know the first thing about building wealth. But people trust them anyway. Because they're successful in their field, we assume they must be smart about everything. We see their lifestyle and think they must know something we don't. So when they tell us to buy NFTs, we listen. When they show off their cartoon apes, we want one too. And the celebrities know this. They know their endorsement carries weight. They know their fans will follow their lead. And they use that influence to pump worthless digital garbage. The entire NFT bubble was fueled by celebrity hype. Without celebrities lending their credibility to these projects, most people would have recognized NFTs for what they were, a scam. But when you see Paris Hilton and Jimmy Fallon laughing about their bored apes on national television, it seems legitimate. When Steph Curry makes an NFT his profile picture, it seems like a smart investment. The celebrities gave NFTs a veneer of respectability they never deserved. When the celebrity hype machine finally ran out of gas, reality came crashing in with brutal force, and millions of ordinary Americans paid the price for trusting the wrong people. Let me show you what happened when the music stopped. The numbers don't lie, and they're devastating. In January 2022, the NFT market was doing $17 billion in trading volume. By September 2022, just 8 months later, it had dropped to under $500 million. That's a 97% collapse. Not a correction, not a bear market, a complete and total wipeout. Those bored apes that were selling for $400,000 at the peak, down to $50,000, then $20,000, and they kept falling. Celebrity-endorsed projects that launched with massive hype, worthless within months. Some went to literally zero. The speed of this collapse was brutal. People didn't have time to get out even if they wanted to. One day they're checking their portfolio and feeling rich. The next week, the floor is falling out from under them. The week after that, they can't find a buyer at any price. It happens so fast that thousands of people watch their life savings evaporate in real time. Let me tell you about some real people. There was a school teacher in Ohio, 58 years old. She'd spent her entire career saving for retirement, had $85,000 put away. Then she watched a YouTube influencer who promised that if she invested in NFTs, she'd be a millionaire within a year. She believed him. She took her entire retirement account, every penny she'd saved over decades, and bought NFTs. Today, those NFTs are worth $2,300. She's 58 years old, and she's going to have to work until she's 75 because she gambled her future on digital receipts. That's not a setback. That's her entire retirement destroyed. A young couple called my show. They were in their early 30s. They took out a second mortgage on their home to buy NFTs. They lost $120,000. Now they're facing foreclosure. They might lose their house. They're staring at bankruptcy. Their credit is destroyed. Their marriage is under incredible strain, all because they believe the hype. There was the guy who borrowed $50,000 on a personal loan at 18% interest. He can't make the payments. His wife is threatening to leave him. A college student who used his student loan money that was supposed to pay for his education, to buy NFTs because he thought he could flip them and pay for school without debt. Now he's broke and still has to pay back those loans. These aren't rare cases. This happened to thousands of people. Regular Americans who worked hard, saved money, and then threw it away on a scam because influencers and celebrities told them it was the future. Teachers, nurses, construction workers, young people just starting out, middle-aged people trying to catch up on retirement, elderly people looking for one last chance to build wealth. And you know what really makes me sick? The people who created these NFT projects, the ones who hyped them up and promoted them and told everyone to buy, they got out early. They made millions. Tens of millions in some cases. They sold at the peak to all the people who came in late. They took their profits and disappeared, left everyone else holding worthless digital garbage. This isn't an academic debate about technology or the future of digital ownership. This is real people losing real money. Money they needed for their kids' college education. Money they needed for medical bills. Money they needed for retirement. Money they needed for basic financial security. These are people whose lives have been fundamentally altered because they believed a lie. And here's what kills me. This was completely predictable. Anyone who understands basic investing principles knew this would end badly. When something has no intrinsic value, produces no income, and is being bought purely on the hope that someone else will pay more for it later, that's not investing. That's speculation at best and gambling at worst. It always ends the same way. Always. I've spent over 30 years teaching people how to handle money. My entire career has been about helping ordinary Americans avoid financial disasters exactly like this. I've warned people about debt. I've warned people about get-rich-quick schemes. I've taught millions of people to build wealth slowly through proven methods. And then I watched helplessly as people ignored everything I've ever taught and threw their money at NFTs. Every time someone calls my show in tears because they lost everything on NFTs, it breaks my heart because I know that loss was completely avoidable. I know that if they had just followed basic wealth-building principles, stayed out of debt, built an emergency fund, invested in productive assets, they'd be fine. Instead, they're financially devastated. Some of them will never recover. This is real. This is happening right now. There are people listening to this who know someone who lost money on NFTs. Maybe you lost money. Maybe your brother did, or your coworker, or your neighbor. The damage is widespread and it's permanent for many people. The people who promoted this, the influencers, the celebrities, the crypto bros, they're not suffering. They made their money. They're fine. It's the ordinary people who trusted them who are paying the price, and nobody's coming to help them. Nobody's refunding their money. Nobody's taking responsibility. This is why I get so fired up about this stuff. This isn't about me being right or proving a point. This is about real human beings whose lives have been destroyed by financial deception. This is exactly what I've spent my career trying to prevent. And it happened anyway, because people believe the hype instead of following proven principles. This is why I'm so passionate about teaching people the right way to build wealth. Because this tragedy, this financial devastation, doesn't have to happen to you or anyone you love. There's a better way. So what do you do instead? How do you actually build wealth? Let me tell you the way that's worked for millions of Americans and will keep working long after NFTs are a forgotten joke. First, get out of debt. Stop borrowing money for anything, especially get-rich-quick schemes. If you're sitting there with credit card debt, car loans, student loans, attack that debt with everything you've got. Use the debt snowball method. List your debts smallest to largest, pay minimum payments on everything except the smallest one, and throw every extra dollar at that smallest debt until it's gone. Then roll that payment into the next debt. Keep going until you're debt-free. This isn't complicated, it's not sexy, but it works. Why does this matter? Because debt is the enemy of wealth building. When you're sending hundreds or thousands of dollars every month to credit card companies and banks, that's money you can't use to build wealth. That's money you can't invest. That's money you can't save. Debt keeps you broke. Getting out of debt is the foundation of everything else. Second, build an emergency fund. Save 3 to 6 months of expenses in a boring savings account, not in NFTs, not in cryptocurrency, not in some exotic investment. In a regular savings account where you can access it immediately when life happens. Because life will happen. Your car will break down, your air conditioner will die, you'll have a medical emergency. When those things happen, you need cash available so you don't have to go into debt or sell investments at the worst possible time. Third, invest in real assets. Max out your Roth IRA every year. That's $7,000 if you're under 50, $8,000 if you're over 50. Invest 15% of your household income in good growth stock mutual funds with long track records. Not individual stocks, not day trading, mutual funds. Boring index funds that track the market. Funds that have been around for decades and have proven returns. If you want to buy real estate later, buy income-producing property rentals that generate monthly cash flow, not NFTs of digital real estate. Actual houses and apartment buildings where people pay you rent. Here's the truth about wealth that nobody wants to hear. It's built slowly over decades through consistent, disciplined behavior. Not overnight, not through speculation, not by finding the next big thing. You build wealth by doing the boring stuff that works month after month, year after year, for 20 or 30 years. Index funds aren't exciting. Nobody's going to make TikTok videos about how you're getting rich with mutual funds. You won't be Instagram famous for maxing out your Roth IRA. But you know what happens when you consistently invest 15% of your income in good growth stock mutual funds for 30 years? You become a millionaire. The math is simple. A household making $60,000 a year, investing 15% mutual funds, averaging 10-12% returns will have over $1 million in 30 years. That's not theory. That's math. That's how wealth actually gets built. The stock market has averaged around 10-12% annually over the long term. When you invest consistently and let compound interest do its work, your money grows exponentially. Not because you're smart or lucky, but because productive assets generate real returns over time. Companies make products. They earn profits. They grow. Your ownership in those companies, that's what stocks are, becomes more valuable. I've talked to thousands of people who built wealth this way. They're not geniuses. They're not lucky. They're ordinary people who did ordinary things consistently. They got out of debt. They saved an emergency fund. They invested 15% of their income in mutual funds. They bought a house and paid it off. They did this for 20, 30, 40 years. And now they're millionaires. They have financial peace. They can retire with dignity. They can help their kids and grandkids. They built real, lasting wealth. You know what they didn't do? They didn't chase NFTs. They didn't gamble on cryptocurrency. They didn't follow celebrity investment advice. They didn't try to get rich quick. They got rich slow. And slow wins. Stop the FOMO. You're not missing out on NFTs. You're avoiding financial suicide. The real opportunity isn't in digital receipts or the next hot trend. The real opportunity is in the proven, boring, wealth-building methods that have created more millionaires than any speculative scheme ever will. Building wealth requires character. It requires patience. It requires discipline. It requires delayed gratification. You have to be willing to do what's right even when it's not exciting. You have to be willing to invest consistently even when the market is down. You have to be willing to skip the fancy vacation or the new car so you can invest that money instead. That's the opposite of NFT gambling, where people want instant wealth without sacrifice or patience. Think about where you'll be in 30 years. If you follow the plan, get out of debt, save an emergency fund, invest 15% in mutual funds, you'll actually be wealthy. You'll have a paid-for house. You'll have retirement accounts worth hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars. You'll have financial peace. You'll be able to give generously and live generously. Now think about the NFT chasers. Where will they be in 30 years? Still broke, still jumping from one get-rich-quick scheme to the next, still telling stories about that one time they almost got rich, still working because they never built anything real. You have a choice right now. Choose discipline over hype. Choose proven methods over experiments. Choose real assets that produce value over digital receipts that produce nothing. The path I'm showing you isn't exciting. It won't impress people at parties, but it works. That's how you win with money. Not with digital receipts for JPEGs, not with blockchain verified garbage, not with celebrity endorsed schemes. You win with discipline, consistency, and real assets that actually produce value. The path isn't exciting. It won't get you featured on social media. But in 30 years, when the NFT chasers are still broke and telling stories about that one time they almost got rich, you'll actually be rich because you did the work, stayed disciplined, and didn't fall for the hype. Now get out there and build real wealth.